There's one thing missing from almost every pitch deck. 99% of entrepreneurs have no idea what it is. But this venture capitalist who raised $34 million for her fund in just 3 months is about to reveal it.
So I actually find high support and high standards are completely consistent. I have seen instances where companies raise too much money too quickly. They get more focused on spending the money than making money.
If you're with a founder today, what warning would you give them? But Janet Bannister's story starts with something much simpler. At 15, while her friends were sleeping, she was waking up at 2 a.m. to bake muffins and deliver them by bicycle across Toronto. Store after store said no. Most people would have quit, but she didn't. That same relentless persistence drove her to cold call her way into eBay with zero tech experience, launch Kijiji when everyone said it wouldn't work, and build Staircase Ventures, the only fund that gives founders a share of the profits.
I view my role as coming in there and helping them achieve that objective, helping them be as successful as possible.
And you've said in the past that Canada is one of the best places in the world to start a business.
We need to celebrate Canadian success stories and change the narrative, change the mindset of Canadians.
Today, we'll explore 3 real founder scenarios and get Janet's perspective on how to help them grow. We'll discover the one thing missing from almost every pitch deck, learn the philosophy that guides her approach to supporting founders, and what it takes to succeed as an entrepreneur. Let's dive in with Janet Bannister. Hi there. My name is Gregory Ford, and I've spent tens of thousands of dollars traveling across Canada as a part of the Canadian Founder Spotlight Series. Because I truly believe that to move this country forward, we need more Canadians taking the leap to entrepreneurship. In these episodes, we're going deep on the real stories behind building businesses in Canada, the failures that led to breakthroughs, how they're actually growing their companies, and what it takes to succeed as a Canadian entrepreneur. From coast to coast, we're building real momentum. The entrepreneurs that you're about to meet are moving this country forward. So get ready to be inspired. Let's show the world what Canadians can build right here at home. Janet, welcome to the Canadian Founder Spotlight Series.
Thank you so much for having me here, Gregory. It is terrific to be here.
So glad you answered my DM a few weeks ago and took my shot, and now we're sitting here and I get to tell your story. So again, so appreciative of that.
Well, thanks so much for reaching out.
We're gonna have a lot of fun, and I wanna start at the beginning, and I wanna start at 15. Instead of getting a summer job like your siblings, you decided to start a business, waking up at 2 a.m. to bake dozens of muffins and delivering them by bicycle in the hot streets of Toronto. So I want to start by giving you something, and I want you to take a look at this if you don't mind. And Janet, what goes through your mind seeing this photo of yourself, and tell us the story of starting that muffin business at 15.
When I was 14 years old, I read the book Lee Iacocca, which is about Lee Iacocca and how he turned Chrysler around. And I was incredibly inspired by the power of one individual to make a significant impact. And so I thought I should launch my own business. And I thought, okay, what do I love to do? I love to bake. And so I thought, make muffins in our home and deliver them to stores and, sell them through stores. And so that's what I did.
Okay. And when you look at that picture of yourself and you go back to that time, what do you think of?
I think I look at myself and I think I was pretty determined. I had this idea about starting a business and how I just thought, this is what I want to do. And I'm going to call on all these stores up and down Yonge Street. And I had about 15 stores that sold my muffins. And I would get up at 1 o'clock in the morning and make 20 to 30 dozen muffins and then deliver them on my bicycle. And I think when I look at that picture, I think, wow, there's somebody who had an idea and made it happen and didn't really think about all the reasons why it would never work.
Has that stayed with you for your entire career? Was that a fundamental moment, and did that build the foundation of what has been such a successful career in business?
So, I think I definitely, I think about more about what can go wrong, but I don't let it stop me. But I have always been the type of person who says, okay, here's where I want to go, and let me figure out a way to get there, as opposed to, well, what opportunities are knocking at my door? Or, well, I'd like to do that, but I can't because I don't know the right information or I don't know the right people. I just sort of would say, this is where I want to go, and I'm going to figure out how to get there.
Okay, amazing. If you had a chance to speak to the 14, 15-year-old version of you, of young Janet, what would you tell her?
I just say, like, you go. Like, you're doing a great job. I think, though, I would also say, like, enjoy every moment. Um, like, I love my work. I've always loved my work at all different stages. And I think I would say, hey, you're on the right path. You're doing great things and enjoy the journey.
Okay, amazing. So tell me about that moment when you wanted to quit. It was really tough because I know you have a story. Tell me about that story and what kept you going.
So what happened was I was calling on stores to try to get them to sell my muffins. And so it was before I started the business. So I was still in high school. And so I went out on a Saturday and to call on all these different stores that would hopefully sell my muffins. And I walked about a 2-mile distance in the hot sun, calling on all these different stores with these uncomfortable shoes and a long sleeve shirt. And I got to the end of sort of where I was going. I walked from Lawrence to Davisville along Yonge Street. And I had been told no over and over and over again. And I thought, oh, geez, I'm hot, I'm tired, like this is not going well. I should just hop on the subway and go home and forget it. And like, I'll come back another day. And then I just thought to myself, you know what? No, Janet, you said you were going to go down one side of Yonge Street and up the other. So just keep going. And I walked back up the other side of the street and I got 6 stores to sell my muffins. And I think that, that just speaks to discipline and determination and just keeping going and saying, you know what, yes, it's hard, but I said I would do this and I'm going to do this.
And how does that moment, because you're managing partner at Staircase Ventures today, so how does that moment connect to what you look for in founders today?
Oh, so like, I think that that grit and resiliency and the can-do attitude of an entrepreneur is so important. There is no straight line to success. Every company, even though, you might read about this great company and from the outside you might think, oh, they just like went straight up. It's amazing. Yeah. It's never easy. And so if you're going to be successful, whether it's as an entrepreneur or an athlete or as a business person, like in any field, you need to have that grit and that determination that says, hey, this is a bit of a setback, but that's okay. I'm going to keep going. And tomorrow I'm going to be even better because I've learned from this little mini setback.
And how many times have you been in that mental space where you wanted to quit? It was really difficult, but you went to the other side of Yonge Street and you went through anyway. How many times has that happened a lot in your career? Like, oh, this is just too hard. But then you remind yourself, like, hey, keep going.
Yeah, you know what? I think in little ways it happens all the time. So like I was a competitive triathlete. I was on the national triathlon team. And so I still exercise a lot and train a lot. And I mean, regularly, like I was in the pool this morning before 5 o'clock and I was like going hard and doing my hard set. And I was like, yeah, I could quit now. I was doing some butterfly. I was like, I really want to stop before I get to the wall. But I said, no, just keep going. And I think, so that's like one little mini example. Or it's, having to get up early on a Saturday morning to respond to all those emails or, make another call to try to raise money for the fund. And like, hey, I've got 100 follow-ups I need to send to say on a Sunday morning that I'm going to just sit down and bang out 100 emails to follow up on things. And so, but I think it's that same muscle. And I think if you become like, if you just get it, if you get it in your mind that you're not going to let setbacks stop you, then what you can become, you have almost a reflex action where, okay, something doesn't go wrong, something goes wrong, okay, that's all right, I'm going to pick up, I'm going to keep going, right? And it's just almost a muscle reflex. Yeah. Or if you hear that voice inside your head that says, hey, I want to stop, I want to quit, like instantly the other voice says, no, keep going, we don't quit, we just keep it going.
You obviously had that from an early age. Like, where did that come from? Was it your mom or your dad? Or was there someone that instilled this type of thinking in your mind? Because everyone has those moments of doubt, but not everyone overcomes them. Not everyone says, oh, I'm going to push anyway. I'm going to do the butterfly to the wall.
Yes.
Where did that come from?
I think it was a little bit innate. So I grew up, I was the youngest of 4 kids, and I had 2 older brothers and an older sister. And I always wanted to keep up with my older siblings. Like my parents tell stories of when I was 2 years old, going to the dining room table and throwing my little booster chair off my chair because I wanted to sit on an adult chair like everybody else, right? Or when I wanted to learn how to ride a bicycle, I wanted to learn how to ride a 2-wheeler bicycle when I was 4 years old. And they would be sleeping in the morning and they would hear the garage door opening at 5 o'clock in the morning, and they'd look out, and there I was getting my low 2-wheel bicycle out and having one foot on the curb, just pushing, trying to teach myself how to ride a 2-wheel bicycle. And so I think a part of it is innate, and just this desire to, not only just keep up with my older siblings, but I think I have always had this innate satisfaction from personal improvement. And so I think it's one reason why, I've always loved running. I love, swimming or biking. And one of the things I love about those sports is, yes, you're racing against other people, but you're also racing against the clock. And I love the feeling of knowing, hey, I'm doing better today than I was yesterday. And just that internal competition is super satisfying and super exciting for me.
Let's fast forward now to 1999. So you're a little bit older at this point. You're at McKinsey, you realize tech is going to change everything, but you have zero tech experience. You have no visa, and you don't know anyone in Silicon Valley. So you do something that most people would never do. You look up all the top VC firms and you start cold calling them. Tell me that story and your lesson for founders of being the architect of your life.
Yeah, so I'm a huge believer in you need to figure out where you want to go, and then figure out the steps you need to take in order to get to where you want to go. And I think too many people, they almost are like a passenger on the train of life, and they just sort of get on a train and they just keep on going, and their career is more determined by circumstances than by their own determination of where they want to go. And so I realized that in 1999, that technology was going to transform every industry, every functional area. And if I want to build a career in business, I needed to learn technology. And I thought the best place in the world to learn that would be in Silicon Valley. And so again, the idea about just here's where I want to go. Here's where I want to go. Here's where I am today. And how am I going to go from one step to the other to get to where I want to be? And I just thought, hey, if I want to work for a fast-growing tech company in Silicon Valley, the best way to figure out where I should work and to find the best companies is, rather than going company by company, I should go to venture capitalists who will have a whole portfolio. That seems to me to be a more efficient way. And so then I thought, okay, let me look at the different VC firms and the partners. And there was a firm on the list, on the top 10 Silicon Valley firms list, and the firm was called Benchmark, and there was a guy there named Bob Kagle. And his background was in consumer packaged goods and management consulting, which was similar to me because I had worked at P&G and McKinsey. And so I realized, here is somebody who will see a value in my background and see a similarity, and hopefully he will be able to connect with me and then introduce me to some of his portfolio companies. So that's how it happened. So I tracked down his email and phone number and reached out. And, first of all, he didn't return my emails and my phone calls for about 3 weeks. Yeah. And finally, after persevering, his assistant called me back.
So how long, I guess, because it's one thing to have that goal in mind. So you have this objective and you're like, okay, I should really connect with this VC. How many times did you have to call him?
I think I called or emailed him about 6 or 7 times. And so I think a couple of things to the story. First of all, it got to the point where I was like, I'm just going to persevere. And I thought, he's not returning my phone calls. So I'll just keep going until he tells me to stop. But the other thing about this story is that I wasn't just sitting around waiting for him to return my phone call. I also had many other things going. So I was also reaching out to other venture capital firms. I was also researching other firms, and I was getting in touch with people. So I was doing a lot of different things. But that was just the one that happened to, in the end, it was through him that I got connected to Meg Whitman, who was the CEO of eBay at the time.
But there's a story there of the assistant, right? Yes. So you're cold calling, you're like, okay, I got to meet with Bob. So you're cold calling, and finally the assistant gets back to you.
Yes.
If you could walk me through that story.
The assistant calls me. She says, Janet, Bob has got all your messages and he has nothing for you. And I said, okay, well, I understand that, but you know what? I think it would be, worthwhile for Bob and I to have a conversation because we have a very similar background and I might be able to help him with some of his portfolio companies. So again, I think a couple of things on that, like just sort of footnotes, is when somebody says no, like, don't just take no, sort of like push it a little bit. But also, it was not about, I want to meet with him because I want him to help me. It was, I'd love to meet with him because I may have some ideas that can help his companies. And I get so many people who reach out to me who say, one of my least favorite expressions is pick your brain. Like people who say, I want to reach out and pick your brain. It's like, no, my brain does not need picking. Like, no, thank you. Right? But versus saying, hey, here's how I can help you. So anyways, I talked to her about that and how I might be able, why it would be worthwhile for Bob to spend 30 minutes with me. Yeah. And she said, I tell you what, Janet, next time you're in the Valley, you let me know and I'll get you 30 minutes on Bob's calendar. And then I called her up the next day and said, hey, I'm going to be in the Valley next week. Could I get that meeting with Bob? And I didn't really have a plane ticket booked or anything like that, but I just thought, hey, if I can get 30 minutes with him, it is worth flying across the country to meet with him because that may be my opportunity that will enable me to get to where I want to go.
So you finally crack through. You finally get to the assistant. She says, okay, fine. Next time you're in Silicon Valley, you can meet with Bob. And how quick did you book that flight? Was it the same day?
Yeah, I think it was the next day or something. Yeah, I booked the flight and off I went.
Okay, and then I guess what's this teach people? This could be for founders or anyone in terms of creating their own opportunities.
Yeah, I think, as I said, it's all about creating your own opportunities. I think sometimes people say to me, oh, Janet, like, do you have any connections in this company? Do you have any connections to this person? And yeah, connections are helpful. But I think you can create your own connections, right? As long as you have something that's worthwhile to somebody. So I think that's at a specific level. But more broadly, I think it's about creating your own opportunities, not waiting for the opportunities to come, but to say, hey, you know what? Here's where I want to go. I'm going to figure out how to get there. And the path may not be linear and it may not be clear, but I'm just going to figure it out because I really want to get there.
Got it. And I guess if you had like a one-liner, if you were giving anyone a tip in terms of how to build a relationship with a powerful person and they want to meet with them for whatever reason, like what's your tip for that person? Rather than saying pick your brain.
Yeah.
Don't pick
your brain.
Say pick your brain.
No, don't pick your brain.
It's the good thing to do in a really short way.
Explain to them how you could help them. Explain to them why it would be worthwhile for them to meet with you.
So our listeners and people watching this, they probably don't know this, but you created Kijiji. It was your idea. You came back to Canada after working in Silicon Valley and eBay. You pitched the idea of Kijiji to the eBay executives, and they tell you, okay, that's fine. You could do this, but if it doesn't work out, you're probably not going to have your job. Tell me that story and the lesson of betting your career on a vision that no one else really believes in.
Yeah, so what happened was I came back to Canada with eBay. And the first thing I did was looked at the data and I said, how is Canada doing versus every other country around the world in terms of eBay? And what I realized was a lot of people were going to the eBay website in Canada, but people were not transacting. So if you looked at the conversion rate from going to the site to actually doing something on the site, that conversion rate amongst Canadians was half that of every other country around the world. And so I started digging into that and finding out why was that? Is it something about the website in Canada that we need to adjust? And what I realized was it was not an eBay specific problem. It was how Canadians were using the internet. They were researching online, but transacting in person. And I thought, if that is the model, if that's what Canadians are doing, we should develop a product that suits how they are shopping. And so I think, in a way, you could say that's almost like a bigger life story just there, right? If it's like, hey, you got to figure out a path, right? And you got to look at the data And you've got to say, okay, what is the data telling me? And therefore, what is the right solution? Rather than saying, hey, here, eBay works in every other country. Okay, that's fine. But if I really look at the data and I look at how Canadians shop, there may be a different solution. So I came up with a bunch of different ideas that I thought would be more relevant to the Canadian consumer. And I thought that a classifieds model would work the best. Craigslist was already in Canada, but I thought there was an opportunity to create another classified site and a larger, and to grow it into more mainstream. And, I pitched the idea a few times. This is like a recurring story in my life. I pitched the idea a few times to the eBay executives, and they all said no. They said, Canada's too small. It's not a priority. Craigslist is already there. The battle's been lost. We've lost the battle. Craigslist has won the battle for the online classifieds in Canada. And then finally, I found out that eBay was getting ready to launch a classified site in Europe. So I said, let me take the code, launch it in Canada. I just need a little bit of capital and I'll build the business. And as you said, they said, okay, that's fine. But if it doesn't work out, you can't come back to eBay. We love you, but we're going to backfill your role. Yeah.
And so then what happened? So you get the green light. You're like, okay, I've had this idea. You're pushing it. You're getting a lot of no's. And then you finally launch Kijiji. And what was the result of that?
So, fast forward, it became one of the most visited sites in Canada, and it became very successful. But like anything, it wasn't a success overnight. And there were some things that worked, some things that didn't. I think one of the things, I'll tell a story that I think is interesting, along this theme of a lot of people are going to say no. So when we launched Kijiji, we didn't have much marketing budget. And so I had this idea that I wanted to get a lot of PR. So I was constantly calling the newspapers and the TV stations and the radio stations, trying to get them to write about Kijiji. And finally, I got through to somebody at National Post, and they said they would write about Kijiji. So I was so excited. So, I spent time getting my talking points all in order, and I went over there and I met with the guy. And for half an hour, he proceeded to berate me about how this was never going to work. And didn't I know that Craigslist already existed? And this was never going to make money. And I was crazy and da-da-da-da-da. And I laughed pretty down because I'd walked in on such a high, this is going to be awesome. And then, just it cut me down. But then I drove home and I thought, you know what, Janet? You have a choice of how you can react right now. You can either get discouraged and feel sorry for yourself, or you can get determined and show that guy. And I thought, I'm going to show him. And I was just I believe in this. And so I do need to think about his criticism and go through my mind. Was it valid or was it not? But then, you know what? I'm just going to do this. I'm just going to build this business because I believe in it. And I'm not going to let somebody tell me that it's not going to work.
So for founders pitching investors, what's the lesson about conviction versus stubbornness? Because I can imagine we've obviously meet with founders all the time.
Yes.
And there's a difference between, okay, I have this idea and I believe it in my heart versus going after that for too long.
Yes.
So what's that lesson? How do you decipher the two, or is it impossible?
No, I think it is a fine balance. There's so many things in life and in startup land where it is a balance, right? It's you've got to be confident, but not arrogant, right? And so you've got to be confident, or I would say maybe another way, there's so many different things you need to balance as an entrepreneur. You need to be confident, but also humble. And you need to have conviction, but also be very open to feedback and contrarian views.
Yes.
And so I think part of the difference is in your objective. And I think that, do you want to do what's right or do you want to be right?
Yes.
And I find some people think, oh, I want to be right. This is the way it's going to be. This is the way I'm going to build the business. And this, I want to be right. Or I'm going to pitch this investor and I want to tell them that I am right in terms of how I am thinking of building a business. This, I would say, versus I'm building this business. I really believe in it, but and I have some ideas about really go to market, but I really care mostly about getting to the right answer. I care more about getting to the right answer than I do about getting right. So if I'm talking to you and you provide me with some feedback that I think is going to get to a better answer, like that is awesome. That is a huge gift.
So you have to have the passion for the goal, but be willing to adjust how you get there.
Exactly.
And listen to the smart people around you, and even the naysayers like the reporter,
Yes.
and take those lessons away and adapt, but keep that goal in mind of what you want to achieve.
Yeah. And I think it's always, when somebody gives you feedback, even if it's disguised as criticism, is taking time to step back and think, what do I think about that? Is that valid? Oh, should I change that? Right. And just thinking about everything and reflecting on it yourself. And so again, it's a fine balance between having that conviction, taking feedback, but not being like a ship being blown in the wind, right, on an ocean that has no rudder, right? And so it's that fine balance. And as I said, I think thinking about, hey, all I care about is getting to the right answer. And then let me take in all these different bits and I will evaluate them and then I'll make the right decision.
So Janet, you've developed a reputation for spotting successful founders when others really do miss them. You've seen hundreds of pitches, you've funded dozens of businesses, and I want to test your framework today.
Okay.
Ready?
That's great. I love it.
Okay. In this case are 3 founder examples. So I'm going to give you a founder, and I want to know, Janet, would you invest? And if not, what changes would you recommend they make to make them fundable? So let's start. Founder number 1 we're calling the Perfectionist. So this is a fintech founder, strong market opportunity, but they've been building for 18 months. The product is technically excellent, but it's still in beta. The founder says, we want to get it 100% right before we launch. Would you invest? Or what feedback would you give them?
Yeah. The concern that I would have about this founder is they may lack a speed of execution, and the hustle factor is one of the most important things that we look for in investing in founders. And what that means is that they are always getting, they're out talking to customers, they're getting their feedback, they're hustling, they're moving the ball forward. Every single day they're moving the ball forward. And it would concern me that this founder is not doing that.
And does this happen often where you have a founder that's launched something and is it better to get something out, make mistakes and adapt? Is that a better way to approach it?
It's definitely better to get something out in the hands of customers.
Yeah.
Maybe not launch it broadly, but definitely get your product in the hands of customers as soon as possible and get customer feedback and then improve and iterate based on that feedback.
Okay, excellent. So let's go on to the second one. The second founder, we're calling the industry expert. So this is healthcare SaaS founder, 10 years of industry experience. They've launched 12 months ago, 15,000 MRR, but they've seen flat growth. Customers want new features, but the founder says, that's not our vision. They haven't changed the product strategy despite getting that user feedback. So would you invest, or what changes would you recommend that they make?
Yeah, I would have concerns about this profile of a founder. It sort of links to what we talked about before in terms of being stubborn versus having conviction. It sounds to me like a founder who is just not listening to their customers, not taking the market feedback, does not have a growth mindset, has sort of said, hey, this is what I want to do and this is the road I'm running down, versus saying, hey, this is where I'm going, but I know I'm going to have to learn and grow and develop and get feedback and get help from people along the way in order to get to my goal.
Okay, great. And let's go to the third one, is the technical visionary. So this is a PhD researcher, breakthrough AI technology. They've been building for 18 months, but they don't have any revenue yet. They're working 70 hours a week, working exceptionally hard, but they can't find a co-founder. They say something like, no one else understands this technology. Would you invest, and what feedback would you give them?
So one of the things I always look for in a founder is the ability to attract, motivate, and retain outstanding people. Because it doesn't matter how great you are as an individual, if you cannot attract, motivate, and retain outstanding people, you're never going to build a great company. No one single person can ever build a great company. So the warning signals for this, for me, would be somebody who just cannot find a co-founder, who is doing it all themselves. But it would concern me that the person is working so hard and just in solo mode. And are they a person that can scale? Can they scale the business when they cannot find other people to share the responsibility and share the opportunity with?
And you need, and I know this from watching your past talks, finding that exceptional talent is a requirement in terms of a successful business.
Absolutely, absolutely. You can only be as good as the people who you surround yourself with.
So there's one thing missing from almost every pitch deck you see that amazes you. Founders, they could articulate features, they show competitor grids, they prove their product works, but they're missing the most important thing, or that one thing. What is it?
I find too many founders, they cannot articulate their long-term competitive advantage. They cannot articulate, here's where the market's going to be in 5 years. Here's where all the different players are going to be. And here's where we're going to be and why we're going to win in the short term and the long term.
Mm-hmm. Okay, awesome. And that's obviously, why is that so rare? I guess why do founders not think of that?
I don't know is the short answer. But it amazes me how often when I ask a founder, why can't somebody else copy this? And their answers just are not they don't have a lot of depth to them.
Got it. So if there's founders that are going to be listening to this, right? What are some really good examples of some long-term competitive advantages?
So I think in terms of what can form a competitive advantage, it could be network effects if you get into the market first. So let's take Kijiji classifieds. We were able to move quickly, and then we had network effects where the buyers want to be where the sellers want to be where the buyers are. So that can be a form of network effects. It can be proprietary relationships. So if you sign up exclusivity in terms of partnerships, that could be another example. Another example would be data and getting proprietary data that nobody else has access to, and then being able to train your models on that data that other people don't have access to.
Okay. And then is there a founder in your fund today or that you're funding today that really has that long-term advantage that you want to highlight?
You know, an example, and we have a company that has a great long-term advantage that I was lucky enough to invest in their seed round, and I'm no longer on the board, but I'm great friends with the founders, and it's clutch.ca. And for those of you who may not be familiar with it, it's a used car platform.
Buy a car.
Yeah. So you buy a car. And why is that a competitive advantage? They've got a few competitive advantages. First of all, they have the best inventory, and because they have the best inventory and the most inventory, then they get more users, and because more users go there, then they get better inventory. They also have huge reach and a lot of cars, so they know how to buy the cars at the right price. They also know what price to sell the cars. They also have competitive advantages just in terms of their infrastructure. And they also have an advantage because they have the economies of scale because of how many vehicles they are servicing. So that provides another advantage to them.
And those are a really good example of a long-term competitive advantage that other entrepreneurs could be inspired when they're coming in and they're trying to get funding, thinking of those things. Yes. Okay, got it. And then in terms of funding, this is related, but a little bit of a different question. I know you believe that founders, they could raise too much money too early and it could hurt them. Can you talk through that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I have seen instances where companies raise too much money too quickly. And the challenge with that is a couple-fold. First of all, they get more focused on spending the money than making money. And also, if they're raising too much money and the valuation is too high for where they are, then they need to grow extremely quickly in order to live up to that expectation and in order to raise an even higher valuation next time. And the problem with some companies is they are not ready for that rapid growth. So specifically, let's say a company doesn't have, I've seen this quite a few times, where a company does not have product market fit now. It's sort of, they think they have a product and they think they have a customer, but they're not 100% sure that this is the right product and the ideal customer. And they're not exactly sure how they're going to go to market, but they have sort of some ideas. They raise a lot of money and then they're like, oh my gosh, we got to grow really quickly because our investors invested in us, assuming that we would triple this business every year. And we've got all this money. Let's start spending more money. Let's start doing more marketing campaigns. Let's start calling on new customers. Let's start, building additional features to our product. But they don't have the foundation. They don't have that foundation. And so a lot of that money can therefore be wasted. And then what happens a year or two down the road, they've spent a lot of money. They haven't made the progress that they thought they could make. And their valuation is now much lower than they raised their last round at. And so then they become in a lot of trouble because they can't raise more money. And so I just think that, like in life, a business has to have a really strong foundation. And you need to, as a business, really nail the product market fit. Figure out, okay, what is your product? Who is your ideal customer profile? How are you going to get to market? And nail that and then grow that, as opposed to trying to throw money. As opposed to throwing money at a problem in order to solve it.
And I guess the big problem is a lot of times founders won't know.
Yeah.
They get a whack load of money and they think they have it figured out. But if they haven't gone through this a few times, they don't even see that problem exists, and they're throwing cash at it. So I guess, like, if you're with a founder today,
Yes.
they just received a whack load of money.
Yeah.
What warning would you give them, or what would you say? Hey, before you spend it, do this and this.
I think the first thing for a founder to understand is where they are in the journey, in the life cycle of the company. Yeah. And so specifically, companies go through different stages. So they start, a couple people have an idea and they think, hey, we want to maybe solve this problem. That's very much a discovery stage. Mm-hmm. Then they go and they find a product and they say, hey, maybe this would work. And they start getting some customer feedback. So then they're at the design stage, right? And they're trying to figure things out. And then after that, then they get to product market fit. And they're like, hey, this product actually really resonates with this type of customer. That's awesome. Now, the next thing we need to do is, now that we know we have the right product and we know who we're going to sell it to, now we've got to start experimenting and figuring out, how can we reach those customers most effectively? Is it sales? Is it marketing? What are the channels? And then we scale. And it's really important for any founder to understand where they are on their journey. Mm-hmm. Because if you're trying to figure out go to market, don't start spending a lot of money on sales, because you're going to be wasting that money, because you don't even know if you have the exact nail. You don't know if you have the product and the customer fit nailed. So I think, as I said, it's really important to understand where you are in the journey, and don't get sucked into just spending money because you have it, right? You've always got to be thinking about, what is the return on investment? Am I getting a great return on this dollar that I'm investing? Whether it's investing in human beings, whether it's investing in technology, whether it's investing in sales and marketing efforts, like whatever it is, you've got to understand, what is the return on those dollars that I'm spending?
Has that happened to you in the past, where you're with a founder and they're all excited, like, wow, I just got $15 million or whatever the number is, and you start asking them those fundamental questions, like, hey, before you do this, make sure you're going through the stages and that you're understanding where you are, and you're like, have you helped founders pump the brakes?
I have, absolutely. And frankly, some founders listen and other founders are so excited. They just go. And I think it's the hardest for founders when it's times like during COVID, when everybody is spending a lot of money. Yes. And they just think that's the way it is. And so yes, it takes discipline from the founders. It takes discipline. It takes them to really honestly understand, hey, where am I in this company? And what is the best thing long-term for the company?
Okay, awesome. And then piggybacking off of that, talking about founders, right? Yeah. You have a contrarian philosophy in venture capital, and it separates your firm from the rest. And you talk about how founders are people too. Tell me about that board meeting where an investor was criticizing a founder who was having some personal issues at the time, and how that relates to your philosophy of founders are people too.
I've now spent 11 years in venture capital, and it surprises me how some venture capital folks do not treat founders as human beings, and instead think of them as a means through which they will get a good return on their investment. Yeah. And to your point, there was a story where one executive was being particularly hard, there was a situation I was involved with where there was an investor who was being particularly hard on an executive of one of the companies. Mm-hmm. And really, as I said, being very hard on that person and criticizing them for not having done some things. And afterwards, when the founder left the room, I said to the other investor, like, do you know what this person has been going through on a personal side? And they didn't know. And then they felt quite badly. And I think it just pointed out to me that people, like, they're 360-degree people, right? And what is going on outside of work will impact you in the workplace. And therefore, we want to help founders perform their best and show up their best every day, we need to help them position themselves so that they can perform their best. And we need to understand them as whole people and care about them as whole people.
And then how do you balance then supporting these founders as whole people while also having that high demand of like, hey, we're going to support you, but we also have really high expectations? How do you balance those two things? Because it must be hard.
So I actually find high support and high standards are completely consistent. And I think it comes from my athletic background. And the analogy I like to say is that if we went to the Olympic Training Center for high performance athletes, I am sure we would find amazing facilities, really clean. There would be massage therapists there, injury prevention things. At a lot of these places, they have, chefs who make them their food, or at least I know at the swim facility, they actually have kitchens where they teach the athletes how to cook healthy foods. They have mental support. They have all these things around them. It doesn't mean that the standards are low. Actually, what it means is the standards are really high, and so they're going to provide them with the support that they need in order to achieve those high standards. And that's the way I view it as well. I view it as, hey, I care really deeply about these founders, and I know that what that means to them is helping them achieve their objectives. I mean, these founders, and it's one reason I have so much respect for founders, is they are taking the more challenging route. I mean, they could make a higher paycheck, work fewer hours, and have less stress by working for a company. But they're choosing not to do that because they want to be successful. They want to build a great business. So I view my role as coming in there and helping them achieve that objective, helping them be as successful as possible by providing the supports that's going to enable them to get there. And yes, part of that is the coaching and the training and surrounding them with the support structure to help them be successful, as well as, helping them with their strategy, helping them do a fundraise, helping whatever it is to make them successful.
And is this philosophy different when it comes to venture capitalists, is in VCs? Is this a common thing, or is this when you wanted to start your own firm, was like, okay, I see this as a gap in the market, and I really want to make this a pillar of Staircase?
When I launched Staircase Ventures, we launched with the Founder Growth Platform, which consists of things such as CEO coaching, peer support groups, Cleveland Clinic support, parental support, all these different things. And we also had a few other unique aspects. And it amazed me, the reaction that I got from founders and from the market in general that said, Janet, we have never seen anything like this. This is incredible. We want to work with you, and we want to work with you at Staircase Ventures because of your offering. But the key thing is, it wasn't the offering. It wasn't, I want to work with Staircase Ventures as a founder because I get free coaching or because I get, these benefits. What the feedback that I consistently hear in the market is, you understand me. Your values are aligned with me. Therefore, I want to work with you because I know that your values are aligned with my values. I know that you care about me as a human being, and therefore I want to work with you.
Love it. Is this how you were able to raise so quickly? Was it with this different approach? Is that what attracted so much attention to it, and how you're able to raise money for Staircase so fast?
So I was very fortunate in terms of being able to raise a fund very quickly. I don't think that value proposition for the founders was a key part in terms of raising the money for the fund. I think that the key reason that why people invested in Staircase Ventures was because they had known me. Almost everybody who invested in the fund had known me for over 10 years. They knew my track record, they knew my reputation, and they knew me as a person.
Okay, love it. Now I want to move on to Canada.
Okay.
And you've said in the past that Canada is one of the best places in the world to start a business, but there's constant negativity. Whenever I post something positive about Canadian business, I get hit with complaints of brain drain, lack of capital, all the reasons that we can't compete. But U.S. investors tell you they want to invest more in Canada. What are those U.S. investors seeing that people here aren't? Because every time I post something, I get blasted about Canada and how this is a great place. So what are the U.S. investors seeing that's different?
So what I hear from U.S. investors is Canada has great tech talent. They are building great companies, and Canadian companies are global first, right? They are thinking globally, which includes not only the US, but other countries internationally. And they like that. And they're like, Canada builds great businesses and, they're great tech talent, great leadership. They're building businesses that last. They're building international businesses, and we want to invest more in Canada. I worry that Canadians don't recognize that. And I think it's part of, I think one challenge with Canada is we don't tell enough of our own success stories. And I'm so happy with what you're doing because there are so many great Canadian tech companies that people don't know about. They are just completely under the radar. And we need to tell the stories of all these great Canadian success stories. I also think that, yes, there are challenges to building a company in Canada. Absolutely. There are things that we need to do to improve the country, to make it easier to start a business, to incentivize our founders to stay here. Absolutely, we need to do those things. But let's get on and do those things. And in the meantime, let's celebrate the things that we can do, right? It's a classic, what does an entrepreneur do when faced with an obstacle? Do they stop? Or do they say, that's okay, like I can achieve anyways, right? And it's like, yes, there's lots of challenges in the Silicon Valley, right? In terms of, I talk to entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley, and what do they say? Tech talent is super expensive. Cost of living is really high. Talent is very unloyal. They will jump ship and leave your company if they think that they can make more money somewhere else, right? Like nothing is perfect. And I think being an entrepreneur is about saying, hey, you know what? Nothing is perfect, but that's okay. I'm going to find a way. It's that getting back to that. I'm here. This is where I want to go. And I'm going to figure out a way to get there.
And if you were going to list out the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things, 5 reasons why it's such a great place to build, Canada's such a great place to build, what would those reasons be? And if you could just list them out in order.
So we've got great tech talent.
Yeah.
Canadian founders tend to think about building economically stable businesses. We are a safe country, a democratic country. We have access to a global market, and we have a huge diversity of talent.
And why is that last part so important? Why is immigration so important?
Well, I think it's important for a couple of reasons, but I will highlight 2. One is when we want to sell internationally, we have people from those countries, and so we naturally think about the global audience. And the other thing is that we have very highly skilled immigrants who are coming to Canada and are helping to build amazing tech companies here.
Love it. Love it. And what's the one thing that we have to do different? Like if there was one challenge that we need to overcome to make Canada the place to start a business and grow a business, what would that one thing be?
I think the one thing is we need to celebrate Canadian success stories and change the narrative, change the mindset of Canadians.
Let's do it. Okay, awesome. But if a 25-year-old Canadian entrepreneur came to you today wanting to build a global company, what's that first specific action that they should take? And what's your advice for them?
My first advice would be figure out what area you're going to build in, and whatever area you're going to build a company in, be it something that you care deeply about. And the reason that that's important is you are going to be spending 70, 80, 90 hours a week thinking about this business for the next, 10, 15 years. You have to really care about the problem that you're solving. You need to be passionate about it because that will keep you going, right? When you have those hard times, when you have those setbacks, you need something really strong. When you have those setbacks, you need a very strong desire to keep going. Yeah. So build in an area that you really want to see change in, that you're really passionate about.
Okay, I love that. And I want to wrap it up with the last question, which is about your philosophy of life is long, the world is small, give first. If you could talk about that mentality, I'd be thinking of a great way to close it off today.
One of the core parts of my philosophy is life is long, the world is small, and give first. And it continually amazes me how if you give first, it comes back to you. But only if you give first with the mentality of, I'm giving because I care deeply about this person. I'm going to do this because I want the best for that person. And if you do that, it's amazing how it comes back. In the world, it is small. And your reputation, how you treat people, it becomes everything in life. I just think that your success and your happiness is closely tied to how you treat everybody else around you, particularly those who can't do anything for you in return. And so it's about going out of your way to make introductions for people. It's about taking the time to give feedback to an entrepreneur who's looking for feedback. It's doing those things to help other people who may be in no position to help you.
Okay, love it. Let's wrap it up with one last piece of advice for Canadian founders. If you have one thing to say to them right now, and they're out there and they're building and they're working hard, what's that one thing that you want to share with them today?
I think one thing that I would say to founders today is just keep going. Keep going on the path, keep learning, keep growing, get better tomorrow than you were today, and enjoy the journey.
Okay, amazing. Janet, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for having me here at the Podium Club. Thank you for everything you're doing for Canada. It's been great chatting with you, and look forward to speaking again.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me. It's been great to spend time with you.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Thanks so much.